OPEX Corporation in New Jersey, and I am joined by John Sauer, who has been here for 27 years. Just found
That's
out
correct.
he's a lifer, maybe almost getting
24 to
halfway there.
go.
24 to go
my math.
still. So he's worked here, started as an assembler, and is now the director of business development.
Senior Director of Global Business Development. Correct.
Global business development. There we go. So for those that are not familiar, we're here at OPEX. Why don't you tell us a little bit about OPEX?
So OPEX is a nearly 50-year-old privately owned company. Our roots are in the mailroom automation markets. And we grew that business into, today we have a split division, it's DMA, Digital Mailroom Automation, and our warehouse automation solutions. And it actually stems from a mailroom technology we developed in the early 2000s that was a robotic-based vehicle that would carry mail pieces to delivery bins, much like what you see behind us here.
Right.
So we took that technology, which we called iBot technology back then, and kind of grew it up and found different market spaces within warehouse automation to deploy it. So 2013, we launched Perfect Pick, which is a goods to person solution, and then went back and visited the sortation piece and launched Sure Sort, which is what's behind us. And then we went back to the Perfect Pick side and introduced Perfect Pick HD, which was denser storage, double deep totes, heavier payloads. And then went back again, and now we're on our third generation goods to person technology, which is Infinity. So
interesting.
Continuous progression on that core technology of what an iBot is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that started out with mail sortation, and now obviously we've seen how things have grown, shipping through not only the mail, but also shipping through other parcel carriers as well. So I guess tell us, and you've probably been here to see kind of that transformation, right, with the time you've been here. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about kind of that evolution over time, how you've seen that look from an automation for mail sortation to now focusing additionally on parcels and higher volume.
Yeah, it's interesting because, my experiences led me to build on what I've seen in the past. And you're kind of alluding to that. So starting in mailroom automation, you look at an envelope. An envelope is really a vessel carrying items, right? Could be a carton, could be an envelope. In our case, it was an envelope. And the contents of that envelope, so we were on the inbound side for the most part. It was taking those contents out, capturing information on them, and processing basically payments, remittance. There was a brief period in time where OPEX got into what we called outbound mail sortation. And for several years, I was actually on the Mailers Technical Advisory Committee, which is a group of people, pre-sort mailers in the U.S. that consult with the USPS to help them understand where technology is and what is possible as far as distribution of mail. So mostly first class mail, but understanding like how their network worked, the Postal Service, how pre-sort mailers could maximize preparing mail and parcels and flats and things of that nature to inject deeper into the Postal Service to get a discount. We did sell that business in 2007, and looking back historically why we did that, it was because we were diverting engineering resources from our iBot technology to handle mail sortation, which was a very mature market. It was a very different client. So we redirected our resources towards this robotic technology. And I kind of went away from the sales part of it or the technical part of it. I became our inventory control and logistics manager internally.
Okay.
Nice. And it was I had a discussion with our CEO, and I said, I've been on the road for a long time. I'd like to see my kids grow up. And he gave me this position as the inventory control and logistics manager. And I had no idea what that meant, honestly. I can tell you, I have no idea. So I find myself, I'm in my late 20s. I'm buying tractor trailers for our truck drivers. I'm learning Kanban systems. We converted our factory from a batch mode to a single piece flow operation. So we're value stream mapping. We're doing just in time type inventory. So I'm learning all this stuff. And in the background, unbeknownst to me, OPEX is developing a goods to person solution called Perfect Pick. So Al Stevens, our founder, who is like a hero to me, having worked for him for so long. His son, David Stevens, our CEO, asked me to work with his father, the legend himself, and his son, Dave's son, Alex, who's temporarily supporting OPEX on building a business case for goods to person. So as an inventory guy that's supposed to understand slotting and skewing and flow of materials, they tasked me with implementing the first Perfect Pick system in our own operation. So
Wow.
we eat our own cooking for.
Yeah.
We have replaced our perfect pick with an Infinity system, but we do our 400 plus 500, about 465 service technicians in the U.S.
Mm.
store parts in the field at customer sites in inventory cabinets, and we're responsible for making sure that the minimum number of parts that are required to support the customer or customers that cabinet is supporting or what have you, that they're always replenished. So we replenish our field service stocks out of our Infinity system here in Morristown.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting thing here because I've seen the facility before and the floor and walk the floor at OPEX here, and it's really interesting to see how, like as you said, you eat what you cook basically,
Yeah.
right? And you're able to leverage those, and I think that not only goes for a testament to how your solution works, but then it's also a great way, I'm sure, to test and come up with new ideas on how to do that. But I'm curious from the perspective of, you said you became the inventory control and logistics manager and you had no idea what that meant, right?
Honestly,
So,
Googled the
yeah.
word logistics to understand what that meant, truth be told.
So I'm curious, like coming from a sales standpoint, I mean, how much better or maybe not better perspective did it give you on like what was happening within the logistics arena and warehousing type of industry?
So the first time I visited an OPEX site, and again, I end up on the sales side of things kind of by default, where they just needed somebody that could speak to customers at trade shows that understand the technology. So I'm still OPEX inventory control logistics manager, but they asked me to go to a show to talk to customers. So in prepping for that, they sent me to some of our customer sites. And I walked into iHerb in Hebron, Kentucky, where we had our first deployment of technology. And somebody starts walking me through, okay, they build a carton here, and the cartons are slug loaded on 5 different carton erectors. And once an order is dropped, they know the cubing information, and they say, okay, this is the right size carton to build. They release that carton, goes through print and apply, and then it just goes through various zones, getting the picks it gets, and then it goes across the check weighing scale to confirm that it's the right weight. Void fill, across another scale for shipping, and then out the door. And I walked through that, and I said, this is basically what I've seen in mail rooms in a bigger vessel. It's not an envelope anymore. It's now a box. And like connecting the dots, I mean, the scales that they had at this site were the same scales I'd serviced 10 years ago on letter machines. And the printers were the same print. I said, I get all this. It's just a different scale. And when you talk about volumes, same thing, like, an iHerb site that's designed to do 120,000 units a day, it sounds like a lot. But in letter houses, they do like 1.2, 1.3, 1.5 million envelopes a day. So the scale was, yes, it's big. The footprint's much bigger, right? Because, typically much bigger because you're handling larger items, but it all connected very, very quickly with me from that perspective. What's surprising is you talk about a warehouse like that, that's very advanced. Your cost per pick is very low. You're getting those 120,000 units out with 100 people or less, which is fairly impressive.
Yeah.
And then you visit new customers and you see that they're picking the paper, and we've seen a picker producing somewhere as low as 40 lines an hour in some of these cases. And
yeah, absolutely.
It's 10x with the right automation or more. So it's everything in between. And I think the more places I visit, the more I learn. Everybody has a different challenge. Everybody has a different problem. And just being able to connect the dots and draw on it's 27 years of experience, and it's not all like just OPEX experience. Like there's all these other industries and markets. And so that's my favorite thing to do, is to go in, walk through customer sites, understand their problems, and see how we can help them. And if our solutions are part of that solution, great. If they're not, we'd love to point them in the right direction and even maintain that, build and maintain that relationship for future. Because we have an advanced development team that is busy working on the next generation of our technologies. And we try and listen to our customers.
Right.
So we have our core technology being the iBot, but we have multiple iterations of that and a lot of different things it can do and different applications. So we're excited about the future of that.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great way to go about it and listen to the voice of the customer, as you mentioned, which we do in the warehouse too, and trying to figure out, how can we ship something better, how can we deliver better to that end consumer. And I'm curious. You said one of your favorite things to do is to go in operations and see how could we potentially improve this. So I'm curious, in the time that you've been here, I mean, what do you have a favorite transformation or that you could tell us a story about?
Oh, so yeah, we have a lot of success stories that I'm excited about, and some of them I can't mention names,
Sure.
but there's one particular customer of ours who I actually became very good friends with in the end. But they came to us kind of not very automated. They were looking at our Perfect Pick HD technology and how to apply it in their operation. And it was a multiple zone operation. So the 2 aisles of Perfect Pick were one zone. It was going to be responsible for like 80 to 85% of the volume going through the facility. But the order originated with what was potentially the largest item, and the largest item wasn't fit for our technology. So they were conveying a 54-inch long carton with item number one typically in it, and then routing to our system and getting those top off picks. And they started off with like a 60-65%. If we can get 60 to 65% of our picks out of your system, we're in good shape. That's our ROI. And we were hitting like 80-85% just a couple of weeks out of the box. And so
Wow.
they were absolutely tickled with what they had, and the system they had could easily scale and double not only in size but also in throughput without any disruption to their operation. So we haven't yet done that, but that's on their roadmap. If they ever need to add storage or add more throughput, it wouldn't disrupt current operation. We'd be able to do that for them.
All right, very interesting, and definitely big time efficiency gains. And I think additionally, like it's great to hear too, as you mentioned, like if you need to add more capacity, there's still the option to do that, and you have the flexibility to do that as well. So talking a little bit about kind of your story here at OPEX and how things have evolved over time in the space, and I'm curious too. I mean, as we're sitting here next to the Shore Sort, so why don't you just tell us a little bit about what's behind us here?
Yeah. So the Shore Sort is a small item sorter. So what does that mean? It's a maximum weight carrying of 5 pounds.
Okay.
So these inside this technology, just like all of our other warehouse automation technologies, is a number of iBots. These iBots are small, robotic, autonomous vehicles, Wi-Fi controlled, ultracapacitor powered. So that's one of our key differentiators. They don't have lithium batteries; they have capacitors. So they're charging and discharging as they flow through the system,
Oh, interesting.
recapturing energy as they're braking. And they're the workhorse that in all of our technologies. So the racking is typically very simplistic, with very few sensors and motors and things of that nature. And the iBot's responsible for its movements and has all the sensing technology on it, and feeds back, its information. For service, from a service perspective, we're tracking mileage and all the things that the iBot's seeing as it's traveling through the system. But basically, you're looking at bins on what we call the 100 side. There's bins on the 200 side. We have a variety of bins that we offer depending on product type and what the rest of the operation requires. And basically, one inductor can induct up to 2,400 units an hour.
Oh, wow.
Again, small items sorted up to 5 pounds, and deliver those to any of these locations. So we have a number of customers that are doing direct to consumer commerce fulfillment, pharmaceutical applications, cross-docking applications, kitting applications. Store replenishment is a giant use case for this.
Yeah.
And you can find countless videos online of not that we've produced, that our customers have produced, which is actually very a great compliment to us. Yeah, and there's hundreds and hundreds of these systems deployed globally. Uh, and you said you've toured our facilities before. I mean, you look at the raw parts here, the pieces of metal that
Right.
we stamp it, we paint it, we weld it. So we're very vertically integrated. So yeah, the system's scalable. Again, we talked about the one use case on the Perfect Pick side, but this system can start off fairly moderate in length because we lengthen the system by adding what we call expansion modules, which is 3 columns of storage. And we start off very rudimentary, potentially with a scanner. It could be a presentation scanner, and then I induct an item. I can scale away up to a 6-sided scan tunnel and process pieces at 2,400 units an hour. I can capture dimensional information and weight information, legal for trade weight information and dimensional information. and then sort to these locations. And basically the WCS has the power to utilize this lighting technology, which on this side is called PTL strip, and the other side is a different, we call it stoplight. It's a series of lights at the top of the machine that instruct the operator what to do in a certain situation. For instance, order complete, lights green. Okay, I sweep the bin, scan it, let it know it's open. The order's been there too long. This should have been completed by now. My 45-minute clock is up, lighted up in purple. And then the operator knows, okay, I need to go send this to QC.
Priority, yeah.
And I can also, for things that are outside of the scope of what the system can sort, I can use this as a manual put wall. So I'm sorting.
Oh, really?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm sorting the shoe boxes, the T-shirts. But it comes to that puffy jacket that the kid ordered that we couldn't get through our induction station. Well, I go scan the jacket, the bin lights up, they place it in the bin, scan, confirm, and then the order's complete.
Interesting. So it's almost a bit of like a hybrid in a sense, right? Where you can use the sortation, but then you have bigger items that don't necessarily fit. You can place those individually. Is what you're saying, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
And we have customers that actually they integrate their UPS shipping label machine on the front end of it, and as we're sorting the items, and the last item hits a bin, the label automatically spits out, and they rip the UPS label off, drop it on our conveyor, and our iBot delivers it to the bin.
Really?
And its order's complete. And we can sort directly to a shipping container as well.
Interesting.
Right into the carton.
Yeah.
In the cases. Yeah.
Interesting. So you can just pull that right off and tape it up and you're good to go.
Correct.
Yeah. Just don't tape the label inside. Right?
Don't tape the label inside. It's not going to go very far without it. Yeah.
I've done that before. So very interesting stuff. Good to learn about what's here behind us. Definitely. But I'm curious, we talked a little bit about the evolution of the systems and how things have come to fruition. And obviously, we've seen such a huge growth in e-commerce and the movement of parcels throughout things. I'm curious, as we look now and we're recording this, we're here on site at the end of October. We're getting right into the meat of peak season, right, in the next couple of weeks. So I mean, what are some of the challenges or pain points that you've seen from customers this year as they're prepping for peak season?
Yeah, so there's really two. When you think about peak season, there's two flavors of customers that I consider this being their peak. It's the retail store, brick and mortar replenishment guys. If their stuff's not on the shelf now or by the end of this week, they probably missed peak, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the e-commerce guys. And the e-commerce customers, what they see is, it could be 6, 7, 10, 15 fold what normal volume is in a given couple of day period. And they still want to maintain as close as they possibly can to their SLAs with their customers, right? So order by this time, deliver by that time. I feel like the American consumer understands a little bit, and maybe I'm too close to it, but I feel like if I place an order on Black Friday on a website, chances are I'm not going to get it when I normally would get it. And I think most people know that. But they still, when you're in a competitive space, and I can get this item from company A or company B, my confidence in company A might be higher. I'd rather, order from company A. So what do we see? The need of our customers, and it's actually a big task for our service group, is we will spend time with every one of our retail customers, making sure from a service perspective, they have all the coverage they would possibly need to get through their peak season. So what does that mean? I want to add an extra 4 hours a day, 8 hours a day. I need to be covered 24/7 for the next 3 weeks. I need Saturday and Sunday coverage, all those things. So we make sure that they not only know their escalation process and plan, but what additional coverages do they need? Because again, we have about 460 plus service technicians that are at the ready, but we need to be aware of what demands might be for customers. That's
interesting. So, I mean, do you guys have because you do all your parts storage and fulfillment and things like that.
Correct.
So, I mean, do you guys see sort of a peak season too on your side too, in terms of like parts and getting ready and all those things?
So if that were the case, that should have occurred already. So we basically we operate our inventory stores in the field on a min-max, and they're looked at weekly.
Yeah.
So every site that has parts every week would get a replenishment if parts were consumed in that week.
Interesting.
That doesn't change necessarily for peak season because those levels should be right regardless of what my level of business is. Now we will make sure all iBots are PM'd and ready to go. Prior to that, which is standard. We know that, you want, when we build these systems, there's some added capacity, right? Again, so the iBots are the workhorses, and I have a particularly short sort would be 22 iBots on a full length system going 2,400 units an hour.
Mm.
If I pull an iBot or two, or maybe even three out, I won't see a degradation in my throughput. But if I get to 4 or 5 or 6, I would feel the pain potentially. So we make sure that those iBots are all like in tip top shape, ready to go, and carry them through. We obviously take our foot off the gas on the preventive maintenance during the period. Like we won't say, hey, we need to stop and grab an iBot. We just we'll let things go a little bit longer through peak, and then we always work with our customers on when the appropriate time to do preventive maintenance would be. So it's maybe we have to start an hour or two earlier, maybe we stay a little bit later. We obviously our goal is our customers' operation isn't disrupted, and they're able to conduct business.
No stoppage.
No stoppage.
We cannot have stoppage during peak season.
Yeah, and when you have a cutoff time with your shipper, everybody's fully aware what that time is.
Yeah, absolutely. So very interesting. I mean, and in that sense too, I mean, like you said, I mean, if you haven't gotten your product to the shelves at this point, and you haven't prepped yet, it's a little too late. But if we look at, as soon as this peak season is over, I mean, even now we could say, should start planning for next peak season, right? Yeah. So if people are looking and they want to, maximize their capacity in their existing space, or they want to add some type of sortation automation, I mean, how long does it take to kind of engage with you guys and start to get the ball rolling on a sort of implementation like that?
That it's customer driven for the most part. If folks are looking to make changes for peak 2024, their conversations should already be underway. For most people. Yeah. We control our own destiny because we make the stuff ourselves, so we can pull timelines in when we need to. But oftentimes there's infrastructure and software development that's out. It's not the product that you're buying; it's all the things around supporting the implementation of a product. So if you take 6 months to make a decision, and you make a decision, and then you get your IT group involved, they need 8 months to develop software. That's 2024 peak already in some cases. So we often, this time of year, it seems like a lot of the ops people, or the engineering folks, I should say, are looking beyond this year's peak. Like what we have this year, that's what we have. That's what we're living. So they look to next year, and we're deeply engaged in those conversations. So. But that we're talking mostly retail. There's a whole plethora of customers that really don't see that seasonal peak, where their seasonal peak is the health food vitamins guys. January, February is their big bubble, and so because there's various peaks for various companies, we can stay pretty consistently busy. But the retail folks are typically engaged by this point for next year.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Interesting to note. And I think it's always interesting to think about kind of that timeline. And I think, a lot of times, some companies, especially the smaller, medium-sized ones, start to panic, I think, too late a little bit and try to see what they can get into place. So it's good to have that idea and also kind of, grease those gears, I guess, a little bit to get started a little earlier. So you talked about, you mentioned January and February in there. So we know that, on the back end of peak season, right, holiday shipping and all of that, we see a large spike in returns as well, right? So talk to us a little bit about, how some of the OPEX solutions can help in the return and reverse logistics side of things.
Yeah. So, there's stats out there, somewhere between 17 and 20 billion dollars is going to be returned.
It's insane.
Right. Yeah. And the percentage of items, and, the consumer is this is what the expectation is. And some folks bake this into their business plan, this percentage of returns, and there's free return. They want to make the online engagement very easy for the customer, which creates a big problem for the ops guys. But it's a strategic decision that the company's made that we're going to make it easy for customers to do business. So what does that turn into? It turns into this plethora of inventory that comes back in January that needs to be received, accounted for, and inspected potentially, and then restocked in a pick phase, and potentially a new SKU created for it if it's considered like an open box buy type of thing, or a used item, or not brand new condition. And to speed up that process, there's technology not only in sortation but in goods to person to to create a more streamlined receipt to get that item back into stock. For instance, in the apparel business, I've been in
Yeah.
a very large retail returns operation, and every item is inspected, right? Because they've come to learn that your holiday season is one thing, but during the rest of the course of the year, people will purchase something to wear it for the weekend and then return it, right? And they have to identify those things. So it's a very laborious process. They have to look at every single piece, and once they've inspected it and they say, okay, this is good to go back in stock as new, they don't return it to the pick face location where the other 12 of that item is, or perhaps there's not
Yeah.
12 left in the building. So they put it in, basically library shelf storage. So they have to put it in with 5, 6, 10 other SKUs to get any type of density out of those locations.
Yeah.
So I've gotten it back on the shelf. It's available to order online, and then it's sold. It's very challenging to pick because now I got to get an operator to that location, have them identify the right number. They have to go through a scanning process to ensure it's the right item, so on and so forth. Very painful. That's where you're talking 35, 40 lines an hour in that type of situation.
Right. Yeah.
But with a flexible goods to person technology, you can get that item into its own single location very densely and have it pickable, much quicker than you could in a traditional process.
Right.
On the inbound side of things, we have the ability to you could scan a carton and capture the customer information on it and introduce the items that are in that container, capture the barcodes and say, okay, John Sauer returned these 4 items, sort those items to a destination. It could be by zone. It could be, that unique SKU for some reason, if you sold a lot of that SKU,
Right.
and get them back in a like bin for receipt very quickly. Again, 2,400 units an hour on the sortation side of things. So we have customers that are doing that, and it's not necessarily the only thing they use the machine for. It's like, okay, let's process some returns,
Yeah.
and then we'll go into the order fulfillment or the cross docking or whatever it is they do with the system. So
Yeah, because use it on both sides basically of the table, right?
correct.
At that side. It's an interesting point there about bringing in those return goods and then having them just go into a shelf location quickly, mixed, and creating additional complexities on the pick side. Like maybe you're putting it away quickly to try and make it available quickly, but you're not necessarily doing the most efficient thing for the whole flow of the process, right? And the order fulfillment on the backside. Talk to us, and you mentioned a little bit earlier about slotting as well. So tell us, kind of the difference when you look at something like the Infinity ASRS, versus typical, pick location, pick module,
Sure.
and racking or shelving, something like that. How does that change the idea of having to slot those locations?
It's a great question. When you look at flexible ASR systems like the Infinity system, at any given time, any one of our robots, which could be hundreds of robots, can have access to any one of the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of totes in the system.
Right.
And anyone can be retrieved and brought to an operator under a minute or two, right? So that reactiveness, that responsiveness takes away, because when you're slotting inventory in a warehouse, you're trying to reduce the amount of labor or distance traveled that the human has to, do to perform that pick, right? So
Right.
I get my A movers closer to them, my B's a little further, C's a little further, or higher up, depending on how your operation is laid out. Often we see A movers on the floor and B up a level, C up a level. And with this type of situation, you put all the inventory in the totes randomly, and at any given time, if you need something, it's there within a minute. The operator's travel distance is not impacted by that at all. So is there some logic to slotting a tote? So our totes can be divided up into 24 cells. If I have a 24 cell tote, would I want to have A's and D's in that same tote? I can. I'm gonna pull that tote down multiple times to pull the A's while I'm not touching the D's. So that might not be the best and most efficient way to do it. But if you can kind of classify A's, B's, C's, and D's, logically in the totes, naturally in a multi-deep system like our Infinity stores totes 3 deep, triple deep storage on both sides, the D movers will naturally migrate to the outside. So there is some logic there. There's also it's pretty common that we would have redundancy of SKUs located throughout the system in various cells for
Okay.
efficiency purposes.
Yeah.
But that's all up to the customer and their business rules and how they handle inventory. But it's very from a slotting perspective, if it fits in our bin, and from a cubic velocity and throughput velocity, if that SKU makes sense, and we help customers identify, if I'm moving 5 pallet loads of water bottles a day for a grocery chain, maybe I don't store that in a goods to person system, right? That's pallet flow or case flow, what have you. So we help identify what SKUs are appropriate for our system. But once they're in the system, there's no real need to slot it. It's kind of like a big black box of inventory.
Very interesting. And I think that's I mean, I love to hear that. It's no need to really do that slotting anymore, because I've done a lot of slotting projects, a lot of late nights trying to do all that data crunching and everything. And I think the thing too, I mean, a lot of times when you look at a traditional racking shelving setup where you're going to pick from bins on the shelf, and you do that slotting, I mean, it's a constant thing, right?
Sure.
I mean, a lot of times, by the time you finish figuring out what the slotting plan is going to be, it's already changed in some aspects depending on what you're working on. So, I mean, the fact that you don't have to worry about that with like an ASRS Infinity solution, and just doing that for you just automatically in the background based on the rules that you've set up, I mean, I think it's such a win there, such an important thing. So very interesting stuff to talk to you here and learn more about OPEX and kind of the way that you can apply this in multiple different scenarios, from the sortation to the order fulfillment to the reverse logistics, returns, and all those different things. So, I mean, very interesting to talk to you. And if people are interested in learning more about OPEX, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do that is go to warehouseautomation.com or visit us at opex.com. And you can find all product information we have, as well as case studies and contact information as well.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put that information at thenewarehouse.com as well. So, John, thank you so much for inviting me here today.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate your time.